Have you noticed that the older you get, the more flying feels like everything around you is speeding up, while you're the only one not on fast forward? The reality is, most travelers over 65 have no idea how many extra protections and options are already on their side. With the way the rules are evolving, there are now more senior-friendly rights in the system than the average passenger ever hears about. Today, I'll walk you through a hidden airport handbook packed with protections and perks for seniors. By the end of this video, you'll know 12 key rules every older traveler can use to fly smarter, safer, and with a lot less stress. And I'm warning you now, rule number 10 is probably going to send you straight to your wallet to check your documents. Don't miss it. If you're in your golden years, or you're helping a parent or grandparent get ready to fly, this is the video to watch before the next airport trip, not after everything has already gone off the rails. In 2026, a lot of trips don't start at a counter anymore. They start on an app. At big US hubs, the default is check in on your phone, tap a kiosk, maybe scan your face, then drop your own bag. The old school counters with real agents are still there, just fewer with longer lines. Here's the part that matters for seniors. You can still get a printed boarding pass on most airlines. The trick is not letting the signs trap you. If you haven't checked in on an app, do not join anything labeled Express, Bag Drop, or App Check-in Only. Those lanes assume you're already done. Look for signs like Full Service, Check-in, or Special Assistance. That's where a human can print your pass and fix problems. But if you're over 65, there is a simple way to dodge the worst of that chaos. So stay with me. Because airlines now lean so heavily on phones, those agent lines move slowly. The TSA may say 2 hours is enough for a domestic flight, but my personal rule of thumb for seniors who still need the counter is no app, arrive 3 hours early. That extra buffer is there to protect you, not the airline. I watched an older gentleman in Denver spend 40 minutes just waiting to print his boarding pass, and by the time he reached the desk, the flight was already closed on the computer. Now, here's the fun part. You don't have to wrestle with the app yourself. Most airline apps let a family member handle check-in from anywhere, as long as they have your confirmation number and last name. Your son in Florida can check you in, tap Send Boarding Pass, and email it to you so you can print in New York. You walk into the airport already holding paper, no kiosk, no 40-minute mystery line. And in case you don't use a smartphone and don't have a printer at all, don't panic. Ask a family member or your travel agent to print everything for you and tuck it into one folder. When it's time to leave, you just grab the folder and go. Once check-in is handled, right line, right timing, paper in hand, you're ready for Rule 2, where one choice you make 48 hours before your flight decides whether wheelchair help actually shows up or leaves you waiting alone. What happens if you get to the airport and can't get a wheelchair because you forgot to request it in advance? These days, on many major airlines and at packed hub airports, places like Atlanta, Denver, LAX, and other big connection points, wheelchair or mobility help is expected to be added into your booking at least 48 hours before departure. If that note isn't in the system, staff may say they'll try to help. But in reality, you're usually behind everyone who did pre-book. That's how seniors end up dragging bags through long terminals or nearly missing flights because no one ever shows up with a chair. And the wild part is, one early phone call can change all of that if you know how to ask. If long walks, standing in lines, or rushing between gates are hard on your body, treat mobility help like part of the ticket, not a last-minute favor. When you book, or soon after, call the airline or talk to your agent and say, can you add continuous mobility assistance from check-in through boarding with no handoffs? Short, clear, and powerful. This one sentence doesn't just get you a chair, it gets you a person walking that journey with you. Imagine how much energy that saves before you even take off. Feels a lot easier already, right? Asking for it is completely reasonable. This service exists so your knees, hips, and back don't have to pay for every step in the terminal. Next up, Rule 3. The quiet little note in your booking that can move you into assisted or priority boarding, even if you never sit in a wheelchair. Ever stood in the boarding line with aching knees, watching half the plane walk on before your group and thinking, why am I still standing here? Here's what most seniors don't realize. You don't need a wheelchair to board early. If you have arthritis, a replaced knee or hip, or just can't stand in one spot very long, many airlines already recognize that as a mobility limitation. And based on how a lot of U.S. carriers handle accessibility now, that can qualify you for assisted or early boarding, even if you walk onto the plane on your own. The trick is using the language the system understands. Airlines hide this inside something called a Special Service Request, SSR, a hidden note attached to your ticket. When you book your ticket or call back later, use a line like, "Can you add a special service request for mobility support and assisted boarding to my reservation?" On the back end, it tells the system your boarding pass gets flagged, and at the gate, you're typically called to board with the early or assisted group. If that scenario sounds like it would save your knees, your balance, or just your patience, drop a comment and tell me. Would you actually use assisted boarding on your next trip, now that you know how to ask for it? Because once boarding itself is calmer, the next question is, who gets to go through security and onto the plane with you? That's where Rule 4 comes in. How to keep your spouse, child, or travel buddy linked to you, so you're not split up just because the computer put you in different boarding groups. Did you know that if you need mobility assistance, U.S. airlines are often expected to let one person stay with you? In the U.S., accessibility rules like the Air Carrier Access Act often allow passengers using mobility or medical assistance to keep one companion with them through security and boarding. At check-in, instead of just saying, "We're together," use language that sounds like it belongs in their system. "We're traveling together, and I'm under mobility assistance. Please link our boarding for companion continuity." In many cases, your companion gets pulled into your earlier boarding group or at least marked so staff know not to split you up in the chaos. And what if your helper isn't even flying with you? That's where this next little trick comes in. Say your daughter is dropping you off, but you're anxious about TSA and finding the gate alone. At many U.S. airports, the airline can issue a gate pass, also called a non-passenger escort pass, so a family member can go through security with you, walk you to the gate, help you find a seat, grab water, and stay until boarding starts. It depends on TSA and that specific airport, but it's common enough that it's absolutely worth asking. I have mobility issues, and my daughter is helping me today. Is it possible to issue her a gate pass so she can escort me to the gate? From here, we head into Rule 5, the one that can let you keep your shoes on and avoid some of the most annoying medical checks. Don't skip it. It can seriously change how your next flight feels. Are you tired of taking your shoes off at security? For a lot of seniors, this is the worst part of the trip. Bending for bins, unpacking meds in front of strangers, worrying what the scanner will beep at. The good news is, under current TSA rules in the US, there are more small breaks for seniors than most people realize, once you know how things are supposed to work. Let's start with your medical gear. If you travel with things like CPAP, insulin, heart medication, liquid nutrition, or similar health items, TSA treats those as part of your medical supplies, not just stuff in your toiletry bag. In many cases, they can stay in your bag while it's scanned instead of being lined up in open bins. Some officers still work on old habits, so a quick heads up as your bag goes on the belt helps. You're letting them know there are medical items inside, not trying to sneak full-size shampoos through. Less rummaging, less bending, and your health details aren't on display for everyone behind you. Now, the metal in your body, implants and pacemakers. New knees, new hips, screws, plates, you shouldn't have to pay for those twice at the checkpoint. TSA has a simple notification card you can print from their website and fill out with a short note like metal implant in left knee or pacemaker fitted. Handing that over before you step into the scanner tells the officer you're going to see something here. It's medical, not mystery metal. For pacemakers especially, one quick reminder goes a long way. Let them know you have one and that you'd rather have a manual pat-down than a handheld wand waved over your chest. It might take a minute longer, But that's a trade you make once, not every single time you fly. Next, keep your medical devices with you once you're past security. At the gate, you'll sometimes hear, "Overhead bins are full. We'll need to check some bags." If your bag holds a CPAP, medical cushion, cane, or other device you actually need, FAA rules give you good footing to keep it in the cabin. A small tag that says medical on the handle helps the agent spot it fast, and they'll usually look for some other bag to gate check instead. Knowing that your device will be right above you is a big weight off your mind before you even sit down. Now for the part your back and knees will thank you for: shoes. Before 2025, the Keep Your Shoes On break mainly applied to travelers 75 and older. But by mid-2025, as new scanners roll out in most U.S. domestic airports, the default is shifting. In many lanes, passengers are allowed to keep their shoes on during screening, and that especially helps seniors who struggle with balance or bending. It won't be every single lane, and rules outside the U.S. can be stricter, but the trend is clearly in your favor. If you're asked to remove your shoes, and that's genuinely hard on your body, a single polite question is worth trying. You can mention that you're over 65 with mobility issues and ask if there's another way to screen you. Sometimes they'll still need them off, especially with older equipment or random checks, but you'd be surprised how often they switch to a pat-down or different scanner instead. On travel days, stick to simple slip-on shoes you can get in and out of without wrestling with laces or bending forever. For once, this is an area where TSA is actually nudging things a bit easier for seniors, not harder, if you know how to point to medical needs instead of just suffering through the old routine. And next, in Rule 6, we're diving into medications and liquids in 2026, because the difference between medically necessary and just another bottle can decide whether your prescriptions stay with you or half of them end up in a bin behind the checkpoint. Do your medications stress you out more than your boarding pass? For 2026, you really only need to remember two buckets: liquids and pills. In the US, things like insulin, prescription syrups, liquid nutrition, and the ice packs that keep them cold fall under TSA's category of medically necessary liquids. TSA mainly wants them separate and declared, not hidden in your toiletry bag. At the belt, one simple line does the job: "These are medically necessary liquids for my condition. They may be over 3.4 ounces. They might swab or scan them, but you've told them exactly what they are from the start. Pills are where it changes between domestic and international travel. On U.S. domestic flights, TSA usually doesn't mind if your meds sit in a Monday-Sunday pill organizer. Once you fly internationally, some countries, including Japan, the UAE, and parts of Europe, really dislike mystery pills in a plastic box with no label. To them, that can look like smuggling or misuse. So for trips abroad, think of your original pharmacy bottles as your meds passport. Your name, the drug name, and the dose printed on the label. You can still move a few into a day-of-week box for daily use, but keep the labeled containers in your bag so you can prove what everything is if anyone asks, or if a doctor needs to see it. Amount matters too. And now, a real story that might make you sit up a bit. A couple in their 70s flew to Australia with 6 months of one prescription, matching their visa. At arrival, an officer only allowed 3 months' worth into the country and literally counted the pills in front of them, keeping the rest until a family member or doctor could get involved. The meds were legal. The issue was how many months they brought in at once. That is why, before any long trip, especially if you will be gone more than 90 days, it is worth doing a quick check for the country you are flying to. Look up the official health or customs page, or ask your doctor or pharmacist to help you check whether any of your medications are treated as controlled there and how many months you are allowed to carry in one go. If you travel with daily meds, tell me in the comments, what part of flying with them worries you the most? And if that already makes things feel lighter, Rule 7 goes one step further: how to bring a dedicated medical cooler bag without it counting against your carry-on, and how to get your temperature-sensitive meds looked after in flight without feeling like you're asking for special treatment. If you travel with insulin or any medication that really hates heat, you've probably sat on a plane thinking, is this getting too warm right now? Based on current U.S. rules and how airlines are handling medical items, a small dedicated medical bag is usually treated separately from your normal carry-on. The trick is to keep it honest and obvious. Use a small soft cooler or tidy pouch and add a simple tag that says medical or insulin. This works most reliably on U.S. airlines. For international carriers, it's still smart to double-check their policy ahead of time. Now, the part everyone with insulin worries about: keeping it cool in the air. Cabin air can get warm, and overhead bins are often even hotter, especially on long flights. For insulin and other temperature-sensitive meds, that's not great. So always bring a small insulated bag and plan to keep them cool yourself. On some flights, the crew may be able to help by tucking a labeled medical pouch in a cooler galley spot as a courtesy. The best moment to ask is as you board, not halfway through the flight. Walk on with your small labeled cooler in hand, smile at the flight attendant, and say, "I'm traveling with temperature-sensitive medication. Could you please keep it in the crew cooler so it stays safe?" And you know what? A small, clearly labeled pouch makes it much easier for them to say okay. And it also makes it easier for them to remember to bring it back to you before the plane lands. Knowing your meds are in a controlled, cooler spot instead of baking in an overhead bin takes a huge weight off your mind. You can sit down, breathe, focus on your trip, and just remind the crew about your bag an hour or so before landing. If this is already changing how you think about airports, don't click away yet. The next rules are where we protect your seat, your space, and your energy on the plane itself. A tight middle seat at 25 is just annoying. At 65, with bad knees or a replaced hip, it can knock you out for days. On many U.S. airlines under DOT rules, an aisle or bulkhead seat isn't always just a nice upgrade for seniors. It can actually count as an accessibility need. If you struggle to stand up, need quick access to the restroom, use a cane or walker, or have serious joint pain, you're not asking for luxury. You're asking for a seat your body can safely manage. What really changes things is how you frame the request. Instead of sounding like you're begging for a favor, you can calmly put it in the language the system is built around. I need an accessibility seat for mobility and comfort under the DOT policy. And if that's not possible, may I speak with the complaint resolution official? That one line does the heavy lifting. It tells them this is about accessibility, not "I'd like a nicer spot." And it reminds the airline that there's a specific person, the complaint resolution official, or CRO, whose job is to handle disability and access issues. U.S. airlines are expected to have someone in that role, even if you never see a sign for it. This won't magically drop you into business class, but it can be the difference between a painful back row middle seat and a more reasonable aisle or bulkhead where you can actually stand, stretch, and get to the restroom without turning the cabin into an obstacle course. On foreign airlines, the spirit is often similar, though the details can change. So think of this line as strongest on flights that follow U.S. DOT rules. If just knowing you can ask for a seat that respects your joints feels like a small victory, Rule 9 takes that same idea into the terminal, using quiet rooms and accessibility lounges to turn a loud, overwhelming airport into somewhere you can actually recharge between flights. Ever walked into a busy terminal and felt your whole body tighten up from the noise and chaos? More big hubs like Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth are starting to add quiet rooms, sensory rooms, or accessibility lounges. Different labels, same idea. Softer lighting, less noise, and seats you can actually relax in. They were first designed for neurodivergent travelers, but many airports now let anyone who needs a calmer space use them, including seniors. You usually won't see a big flashing sign for these, so you have to ask. At an information desk, check-in counter, or gate, you can say, "Where is the accessibility lounge or quiet waiting area?" If you're already down as needing wheelchair or assisted boarding, you can take it a bit further and ask, "I'm under assisted boarding. Am I eligible for a quiet or accessibility waiting area?" Sometimes the answer will be no. That's okay. Because when the answer is yes, though, everything changes. Instead of spending a delay in a hard plastic chair under a loudspeaker, you're in a calmer corner where your heart rate can come down and your body can reset before the next flight. If you've ever sat at a gate thinking, this is just too much for me today, that's your cue to try Rule 9 on your next trip. And if these tips are helping you breathe a little easier at the airport, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next rule. Because Rule 10 is a direct reality check for your wallet. Real ID, expiring passports, and how one tiny missing star on your ID can stop your whole trip at the very first checkpoint. When was the last time you really looked at the ID you hand over at the airport? Not for your name, but for that tiny little star in the corner. In the US, starting in May 2025, Real ID has become the standard for domestic flights. If your license doesn't have the little star, or it's marked not for federal identification or federal limits apply, it's still fine for driving. But TSA can't treat it as your main ID at the checkpoint. That hits a lot of seniors. Many people over 65 have stopped driving or never bothered to upgrade. If that's you, you'll need something else ready for US flights, like a Real ID compliant state ID or a valid passport. The problem is, passport renewals can take weeks, sometimes even longer in busy seasons. So this is one of those jobs you handle now, not something you drag out the night before your flight. There's another layer to this, so listen closely. More airports and airlines are using biometric checks at kiosks, boarding gates, and passport control. The system is comparing today's face to an old photo. If your passport picture is 10 years old and you've lost weight, had surgery, or simply aged in a way the software struggles with, it can stall. So how do you stop that from turning into a long, awkward wait? The fix is surprisingly simple. Carry a second ID with a more recent photo and let a human officer step in and clear you the old-fashioned way. Real ID is mainly a US thing, but the whole AI scanning your face trend is spreading across Europe, Asia, and major hubs around the world. So when this video ends, do yourself a favor. Actually open your wallet and look. Is there a star on that license? Is your passport still valid for your next big trip? If the answer is, I'm not sure, Rule 10 just paid for itself in stress saved. Because if your documents are solid, the rest of the rules you've learned, from digital check-in to wheelchairs, meds, and seats, can actually do their job. If your ID fails at the front door, none of the other planning matters. That little senior option you sometimes see on airline sites looks tempting, right? But in reality, it's a lot trickier than it seems. For most big airlines, especially in the US and Europe, the senior benefit is mainly built into the ticket price and the fare rules. It usually doesn't mean every extra fee melts away. Phone booking fees, change fees, agent assist fees, those don't suddenly disappear just because you're over 65. Take Air France as a concrete example. They sell a senior pass for about €49 a year. On paper, it sounds like a great upgrade, better change and cancellation conditions on certain tickets. And it can be, as long as you've bought the pass in advance and you're choosing fares that qualify. Even then, you still pay something to change or cancel. It's reduced, not erased. In the US, airlines like United, Delta, and American sometimes offer senior fares on specific routes. Those usually mean a different ticket price or slightly different rules for older travelers. If they charge a phone booking fee, they still charge it. The senior part is in the fare, not in waiving every extra charge. If you're talking to an agent, focus your question on the fare, not the service fee. The agent can explain whether that senior fare really gives you better change rules, or if the standard promo fare is actually the smarter deal. For most seniors, the real win is picking a fare that protects you if plans change because of health, family, or energy levels, even if that means ignoring a so-called senior deal that doesn't really help. And now we're ready for Rule 12, your Golden Years travel protocol for 2026, where we pull everything together so your body, your meds, your connections, and your wallet all make it through the journey in one piece. Finally, here's your little survival kit for flying. The habits that make the whole trip actually match your body, your meds, and your energy. First, fix the timing. Booking sites will happily sell you a 35-minute connection and call it fine. For seniors, that's a stress test. Aim for about 90 minutes on domestic connections and at least 2.5 hours when you're changing planes on an international trip, especially at big hubs like JFK or Atlanta. That extra time is what lets you walk, find a restroom, handle a gate change, and still make the next flight without feeling like you just raced across the airport. Just hearing those numbers already feels a bit calmer, right? Next, protect your circulation. Use a 1-hour rule. Don't sit completely still for more than about 60 minutes. When the seatbelt sign is on, keep your legs moving with small ankle circles and heel lifts. When it's off and safe, take short walks up the aisle. Add proper compression socks in the 20 to 30 millimeter hugs range and steady water instead of round after round of coffee or wine, and you've just done your future legs a big favor. But it doesn't stop there. Let tech quietly work for you. At this age, a watch or phone with fall detection and location sharing is a real backup. Turn on fall alerts and share your trip or live location with family. If you get dizzy in a restroom or on an escalator, that little device can trigger help and tell your family where you are, even before you'd be able to flag someone down. One small setting, a lot of peace of mind. Now, the money side. Medicare doesn't travel outside the 50 US states, and many regular plans don't love surprise overseas hospital stays. For international trips, get travel medical insurance and look at how it treats pre-existing conditions. Most policies check a look-back window, often 60 to 180 days. The smart move is to pick a plan that offers a pre-existing condition waiver. And here's the catch. You usually only get that waiver if you buy soon after you book your trip, not the week before departure. It's about flying in a way that fits 2026 and fits your body. Safer connections, kinder habits for your legs, a bit of smart tech, and the right insurance can turn a flight from "that wiped me out" into the first chapter of a trip you actually enjoy. If you're still here, you're already ahead of most travelers your age. You're not just hoping the airport goes smoothly anymore. You know what to say and what to check before you lock the front door. Airlines and airports aren't slowing down. More apps, more scanners, more fine print. But with a little planning, your age becomes an advantage. You get the extra time, the better seat, the real help with meds and mobility, and you still have energy left to enjoy the trip. If this made flying after 65 feel even a bit less stressful, hit like so YouTube shows it to more seniors and their families. Subscribe if you want more deep dive guides like this, not just 30-second tips. And tell me in the comments, what's one airport rule or gotcha that blindsided you in the past? Share what happened and where, and I'll use your real stories to shape future videos. Pack your meds, check that ID, give yourself more time than the app suggests, and I'll see you on the next flight.